I'm Margaret Holloway, 68, in the same split level where I raised my 2 kids and still learned how quiet a house can get, on Mother's Day. I woke up before the sun, not because anyone asked me to, but because my body still thinks love is something you prepare for. I slid my feet into my slippers and walked into a kitchen that smelled like lemon cleaner and hope. The tablecloth, cream with tiny blue flowers, was already ironed and folded over the chair. I laid it down like a promise. By 8, the oven was humming. A chicken roasted behind the glass, skin browning and snapping. The potatoes sat under foil, holding their heat. I'd even set out the little dish of butter with the flour carved into it, the one my Evan used to fight his sister over when they were small. I put out 2 extra place settings, then stared at them long enough to feel ridiculous and added a 3rd, because I didn't want the table to look like it was waiting on anyone. At 10, I checked my phone. No Happy Mother's Day. No. We're on our way. Just silence, like the whole world had decided I was background noise. I told myself they were running late. I told myself traffic on I-75 was a mess. I told myself all the little lies a mother tells so she doesn't have to admit the big one. By 2, the chicken was dry. By 4, the potatoes had cooled into a heavy, pale lump. Outside, my neighbor's grandkids chased each other through the yard, shrieking with joy that makes your chest ache when you're not part of it. I stood at my sink, still wearing the blue dress I'd put on for a meal that didn't happen, and watched my own reflection blur in the window. When night came, I started clearing plates that had never been used. That's when my front porch light flicked on and 2 shadows moved across the glass. My kids showed up close to 10 o'clock, not to apologize, not to hug me. They came because they needed money, and as I listened to their voices in my doorway, I realized I'd already bought myself a one-way ticket. I just hadn't told them yet. Evan knocked like he owned the place, 3 firm raps, quick and impatient, the way he always did when he was sure the door would open for him. When I pulled it open, he leaned in just enough to make it look like a hug from the sidewalk, then stepped back before his chest touched mine. "Hey, Mom," he said, already looking past me, eyes moving through the living room, down the hallway, toward the kitchen. It wasn't curiosity. It was habit. Lauren stood a step behind him, arms folded tight across her sweater. Her hair was styled, her makeup careful, and she smelled like a bright perfume I didn't recognize. She gave me a small smile, the kind you give when you're trying to get through something unpleasant as quickly as possible. "I made dinner," I said before either of them spoke. "It's still here." Evan exhaled through his nose. "Yeah, sorry. Today got crazy." Lauren glanced past my shoulder. "You didn't eat yet?" The question landed harder than she probably meant it to. I shook my head. "I was waiting." Evan stepped inside without asking. His shoes stayed on. He didn't comment on the table, or the cleared plates, or the faint smell of roasted chicken that had long since gone cold. He walked like the house still belonged to him, like I was just keeping it warm. "Mom, we're in a bind," he said. He said it casually, almost gently, as if he were easing into a story he'd rehearsed on the drive over. Lauren stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the floor. "What kind of bind?" I asked. "Just some bills that piled up," Evan replied. "Nothing dramatic, we just need a little help." "How much?" I asked, though I already felt the answer settling in my chest. "3,000, he said quickly, then added, "and some change. 3,200, maybe. We can pay you back next month." I repeated the number out loud, slower this time. $3,200. Lauren finally spoke. "It's a credit card thing. Late fees got out of hand." Evan shrugged. "Stuff happens." I watched his face as he waited. He wasn't nervous, He wasn't embarrassed. He was patient in the way people get when they know the outcome already favors them. "I don't have that kind of money sitting around," I said. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. Evan frowned slightly. "You always say that, then you figure it out." There it was. Not a question. Not even a request. Just an expectation. Spoken out loud like a rule we'd all agreed to years ago. Lauren shifted her weight. "Mom, it's just temporary." I looked at her hands. Her nails were freshly done, pale pink, perfect. I thought of the way she used to bring me drawings from school, edges bent, colors bleeding through the paper, so proud of every crooked line. "I'm tired," I said quietly. "It's late. You should go home." Evan blinked. "What?" I said I'm tired. He laughed once, short and disbelieving. "You're not serious." "I am." Lauren looked up then, startled. "Mom, I don't have anything else to say tonight," I told them. "Please go." Evan stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. His jaw tightened. "Fine," he said. "Whatever." He turned and walked out without another word. Lauren hesitated in the doorway, her hand half raised like she might touch my arm. Then she dropped it and followed him. The door closed behind them, and the house settled into silence so complete it rang in my ears. I locked the door and stood there for a moment, hand still on the knob, breathing in and out until my chest stopped aching. Then I went back into the kitchen. I didn't sit at the table. I cut myself a slice of apple pie and ate it standing at the counter. The way you eat when you're not hungry but need something solid inside you, it tasted too sweet. I scraped the rest into the trash and rinsed the plate. When I climbed into bed, the room felt enormous. I reached for my phone out of habit, then stopped myself. I set it face down on the nightstand and turned off the lamp. A minute later, the screen lit up anyway. I picked it up. A Cash App notification filled the screen. $3,200. No message, no explanation, just the request, sitting there like a bill I was overdue on. I stared at it until my eyes burned. They hadn't come to see me. They hadn't come because it was Mother's Day. They hadn't even come because they were sorry. They came because they needed access. I set the phone down and turned onto my side, facing the wall. Sleep didn't come. Instead, memories did. Small, sharp flashes of moments I'd brushed past too easily over the years. The way Evan used to sigh when I asked about his plans. The way Lauren always said she'd call back later and rarely did. By the time the sky outside my window began to lighten, something inside me had shifted. Not into anger yet, not into grief, into clarity. And clarity, I was about to learn, is much harder to ignore. Morning came without ceremony. No bird song, I noticed. No sense of renewal. Just pale light slipping through the blinds and landing on the same kitchen I'd cleaned the night before, as if the house were pretending nothing had happened. I made coffee out of habit and let it sit untouched on the counter while I stared at my phone. The Cash App request was still there. $3,200. Bright. Patient. Certain. I didn't accept it. I didn't decline it either. I left it exactly where it was, like a test I wasn't ready to take. At 9 sharp, my phone buzzed again. "You there?" Evan. No greeting, no apology. Just a check-in, the way you'd ping a coworker to see if they were available. I set the phone face down and wrapped my hands around the coffee mug. It had gone lukewarm. I drank it anyway. I told myself I wasn't going to look. I told myself it would only make things worse. Then I did it anyway. I opened Facebook. Lauren had set it up for me years ago, insisting it would help me feel connected. I mostly used it to look at pictures of old friends' grandkids and recipes I never tried. I'd never once searched my own children's names with intent. I typed Evan's name into the search bar. His profile didn't say much, but friends had tagged him. There he was. grinning into a camera I didn't recognize, arm slung around someone I'd never met, red plastic cup in hand. The timestamp said yesterday afternoon. The caption read, "Best party of the year." My throat tightened. I told myself it could have been an old photo. Posted late. People did that all the time. I clicked Lauren's page. A video loaded slowly, then filled my screen. Lauren stood somewhere bright and windy, oversized sunglasses on her face, hair blowing back as she laughed at something off camera. The ocean stretched behind her, blue and endless. The caption said, "Needed this weekend so bad, Mother's Day weekend." I stared until the video looped back to the beginning and started again. I turned the sound off, then back on, then off once more. It didn't change what I was seeing. I set the phone down, hands trembling, and pressed my palms flat against the counter. That was when the message came through. A name I barely recognized, Kayla Renshaw. We'd met once, years ago, at Lauren's college graduation dinner. She'd been polite, nervous, the kind of young woman who still said ma'am without irony. Her message was short. "I'm so sorry. I think you should see this." Below it was an image. At first, my brain refused to process it. A group chat, a familiar last name, Holloway siblings. I enlarged the screenshot with shaking fingers. Evan, she'll get over it. Evan, she's just the old lady. Lauren, don't push her too hard. Evan, let her cool off, she'll cave. Evan, we'll let her bankroll this like always. I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder if I gave them enough patience. They didn't. My chest felt hollow, like the air had been pulled out of it too fast. I sat down at the kitchen table and let the phone rest between my hands. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was a strange, floating disbelief, the kind you get when something finally explains years of confusion. I typed back to Kayla, "Where did you get this?" Her response came quickly. Lauren sent it to me by accident, meant to send it to Evan. I told her it was cruel. She blocked me. Blocked her. Over that. I looked at the screenshot again, this time not as a mother trying to defend her children, but as a woman reading how she was described when she wasn't in the room. The old lady, the bankroll, not Mom, not Margaret, not even an inconvenience, a resource. Memories came in sharp, uninvited flashes. Evan at 21, calling me in a panic because his account was overdrawn. I'd driven across town with an envelope of cash because the thought of him scared and hungry made my hands shake. Lauren at my kitchen table the week after Frank died, my grief still raw, telling me I was strong and she wasn't. I'd written that check because I couldn't stand the idea of losing anyone else. Last Christmas, Evan hugging me with one arm while scrolling on his phone, saying, "You don't really need much. Mom, let us handle the fun stuff." I'd laughed then. Told myself he was right. I looked at the screenshot again and felt something settle, heavy and undeniable. They hadn't forgotten Mother's Day. They'd skipped it because they knew they could. I stood up and walked to the sink, staring out the window at my quiet street. Lawns trimmed, flags still out from the holiday. Normal life, carrying on without me. "No more," I said out loud, testing the sound of it in my own voice. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt final. I picked up my purse and my keys. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation that would only circle back to money. I was going to the bank, not to give, to see, clearly, how much of myself I'd already given away and how much was still mine to protect. The bank parking lot was nearly full, even mid-morning. I sat in my car for a moment with the engine off, purse on the passenger seat, hands resting in my lap like they needed instruction. Going inside felt heavier than it should have. as if the building itself might confirm something I wasn't ready to face. When I finally walked in, the air conditioning hit my arms, cold and sharp. A young teller smiled and asked how she could help me. I asked for a printout of my recent transactions. I kept my voice steady. I didn't explain why. She handed me the papers a few minutes later, clipped neatly at the top. I thanked her, folded them once, and walked back out to my car. I didn't look at the numbers right away. I drove home slowly, stopping at every red light like the universe was giving me extra time to turn around. When I finally unfolded the pages, the truth was there in black and white. Groceries, gas, my prescriptions, and then the transfers. Small at first, 100, 200. Enough that I'd barely noticed them when they left my account. Enough that I'd always told myself it wasn't worth arguing over. Then larger ones, 500, 700, 1,000. Each line had a date. Each date had a reason I could still remember. I added the numbers while the light stayed red. When it turned green, I pulled over instead of driving on. My chest felt tight, like I'd climbed a flight of stairs too fast. It wasn't one reckless decision that had brought me here. It was years of quiet agreement, years of believing that saying yes made me a good mother, and saying no would make me something worse. I carried the papers inside and set them on my kitchen table next to my phone. The screenshot was still there, the words unchanged, the cost and the context side by side. That afternoon, I walked across the street to Helen Brooks's house. Helen answered the door in gardening gloves, dirt smudged on her cheek. She took one look at my face and stepped aside without asking questions. We sat at her kitchen island while I told her everything. The missed Mother's Day, the request for money, the screenshot. I expected sympathy, maybe even outrage. Helen listened quietly. When I finished, she nodded once. "You can love your children," she said, "and still stop rescuing them." "I don't know how," I admitted. Saying it out loud made my throat tighten. Every time I try to imagine drawing a line, it feels like I'm the one doing something wrong. "That's because you've been trained," she said gently, "not by them alone, by habit." She wrote a name and number on a sticky note and slid it toward me. Lawyer. Estate planning. Helped my sister when her husband died. He's fair. I stared at the note longer than necessary. Calling a lawyer felt like crossing into territory I didn't belong in, like I was making things official when they were supposed to stay private. "What if this just makes everything worse?" I asked. Helen met my eyes. "What you have now is already bad. You're just used to it." Back home, I sat at my table with the sticky note, the bank printouts, and the screenshot. 3 pieces of paper, 3 versions of the same story. I dialed the number before I could talk myself out of it. David Monroe's office was in a low brick building between a dentist and a tax prep service. Inside, everything was tidy and unremarkable. No heavy furniture, no framed degrees meant to impress. David himself was calm, early 40s maybe, with a voice that didn't rush me. He looked at the screenshot first, then the bank papers. He didn't react dramatically. He didn't tell me how I should feel. "As long as your routines stay the same," he said, "your children will assume nothing has changed." That sentence stayed with me. We talked through my accounts, my income, my will. He explained what could be changed immediately and what would take time. He didn't promise revenge. He didn't frame it as punishment. He framed it as protection. I signed the papers to change my beneficiaries. I scheduled a will update for the following week. I asked, quietly, what it would look like if I sold my house. He didn't hesitate. "It would look like you choosing your future." Driving home, the word future felt unfamiliar, like something meant for younger people. But it didn't scare me the way it used to. That evening, I walked through my house slowly, not to say goodbye yet, just to see it clearly. Frank's boots were still in the hallway closet, toes pointed toward the door. I crouched down and ran my hand over the worn leather. Grief came fast and sharp, but it didn't knock me over this time. It just reminded me of how long I'd been standing still. I put the boots in a box and taped it shut. Then I did something I'd never done before. I sat down at my computer and searched for places where no one expected anything from me. Small towns, quiet streets, houses that didn't echo with old obligations. I didn't buy anything yet. But when I closed the laptop and went to bed, I knew this much for certain. I wasn't waiting anymore. And the line I'd been afraid to draw was already there. I just needed to step over it. I invited them to dinner the following Wednesday. I didn't call it a conversation. I didn't warn them there was something important to discuss. I simply sent a text that said, "Dinner at my place, 6 o'clock." Evan replied almost immediately. Lauren took longer, but she agreed. I cooked meatloaf, the kind Evan used to ask for when he was young, not because I wanted to soften the moment, but because I wanted something familiar on the table, something honest. I set 2 plates this time, no extra settings, no quiet hope tucked into the corners. They arrived late. Evan talked about traffic while taking off his jacket. Lauren hovered near the counter, hands folded, eyes darting around the room like she sensed something was off. We ate. The clink of forks against plates filled the spaces where conversation used to live. When Evan leaned back and said, "So, about that money," I set my fork down. "I'm going to show you something," I said. I placed the screenshot in the center of the table. Evan glanced at it, then frowned. Lauren's face drained of color. "That's not what it looks like," Evan said quickly. "Read it," I said. "All of it." Silence settled in the room. Evan pushed the paper away like it burned. Lauren stared at it, her hands trembling. I slid the bank printouts beside it. "This is what you call help?" I said. "This is what it's cost me," Evan scoffed. "So now you're keeping score?" "No," I said. "I'm keeping myself." Lauren looked up, tears already forming. "Mom, I didn't mean it like that." "Then what did you mean?" I asked gently. She opened her mouth, then closed it. After a moment, she asked, quietly, "What's going to happen to the house?" The question answered everything. I took a breath. I've changed my accounts. I've changed my beneficiaries. I've met with a lawyer, and I'm selling this house. Evan stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "You can't do this." "I already have," I said. Lauren cried. Evan argued. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I simply told them the truth and let it sit between us. They left angry and shaken. I stayed. The realtor listed the house the next week. Evan texted questions that sounded more like negotiations. Lauren called once, late at night, her voice thick with fear. "I didn't think you'd really go through with it," she said. "I know," I replied. "That's the problem." The morning I left, Helen hugged me on my front steps. No one else came. At the bus station, I sat by the window and watched my town slide away, familiar streets folding into distance. A few weeks later, I stood on the porch of a small cottage near the coast. The air smelled different, lighter. I learned the grocery clerk's name. I joined a book group at the library. I ate dinner alone without feeling abandoned. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel like something I had to earn or endure. It felt like peace, and I understood then that I hadn't lost my children. I'd lost the illusion that love meant being endlessly available. Letting that go didn't break me. It finally set me free.